What's up everyone, I'm CallumOnToast, and in today's video I'm going to be showcasing some battles in the Open Great League running an exotic bird trio of Trumbeak, Chattel and Toucanon that I've been wanting to make a video on for a very long time. However, to be completely honest, even by my standards, these three Pokemon just wouldn't have been playable together until this season, where of course Peck received a massive buff and Drillpeck, an already pretty decent charge move, now even does slightly more damage. Now I actually would have preferred to run a Shadow Toucanon for this team, but I have already completely run out of charge TMs this season, and upon evolution it had Flash Cannon and Rock Blast, meaning I was without Drill Peck, which is absolutely necessary for this Pokemon. And actually Rock Blast, whilst technically is part of the recommended moveset, does less damage when it's super effective than a neutral Drill Peck, so unless you're against something like a Talonflame or a Charizard, there is literally zero reason to ever throw Rock Blast, which is why I do think that Flash Cannon is the preferred secondary charge move. Now on my non-Shadow, obviously I still don't have any charge DMs, and it already had Rock Blast, so that's why I'm running it. But if any of you are thinking about running Toucanon this season, do take that into consideration. Now obviously there are tons of hard answers to this team, but despite that I was still able to beat plenty of Pokemon that should have very dominant matchups up against my team. So with that being said, let's just get into the question of the day. What do you think is the most underrated Pokemon that benefits from the Peck buff this season? Let me know in the comment section down below. And with that being said, let's get into the battles now. Let's go into the first battle in Trumbeak into Corviknight, and I have to say with this team, for some reason, I saw Corviknight on like literally half the teams that I was facing in the lead, but the opponent's going to swap out. They try to catch a flying type move, and as a result, we can full send the return, dealing huge damage, and that is the only reason I'm running a Purified Trumbeak for that big damage, stat damage as well from return. Of course, Trumbeak also learns the Rock Blast for coverage, but like I mentioned in the intro, Rock Blast just isn't useful at all. So at this point, we've grabbed the shield, we've got them fairly low, we can come in, we can actually Peck farm down with that Chattel, and the opponent is going to come back in with the Corviknight. The opponent going to go for an Air Cutter, doesn't do too much damage, but unfortunately they do get that boost right off the bat. Now technically, I can still tank this, so I'm gonna no shield, I'm gonna fire off the Nightshade here, and then I will be swapping into my Toucanon, and the opponent is going to choose to stay in with the Corviknight. Now at this point, I am gonna no shield. I believe in some of these battles, I hadn't realized that Rock Blast was so bad, so I do fire off the Rock Blast, despite the fact that Drill Peck, despite being resisted, would do marginally more damage. In this case, it's not really going to matter too much, as a second charge move is required anyways. So yeah, I'm going to overfarm ever so slightly. You could argue, of course, if I go for Drill Peck here, if the opponent tries to make a catch, then of course Drill Peck typically going to do more damage anyways, but their final Pokemon is going to be a Credilli. Now I need to live the next acid here. We're firing off the first Drill Peck, it does big damage, and we are just barely able to reach a second Drill Peck. Drill Peck gets the KO from that range, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Altaria in the lead, so another flying type in the lead here. Of course, they're on Dragon Breath, we're on Peck. Pretty much the same move here. Of course, Dragon Breath is a one-turn fast move, however, so you could argue that is definitely better. But either way, we fire off that Drill Peck. I'm now going to shield this. I can outpace them, as of course Sky Attack is 50 energy. I'm going to overfarm ever so slightly, fire off Drill Peck number 2. Drill Peck gets the KO from that range, but they're going to come in with a Jirachi, and I do not have a great response, so I'm going to fire off the Drill Peck here. Drill Peck is actually going to be shielded by Jirachi. That is huge for me, and now, if I can land a Nightshade here, then we could actually be in. Of course, we're going to shield up the Doom Desire. I'm going to look to throw on CMP, winning CMP. Nightshade is not respected. It gets the KO, and they've got a Mud Slap Shadow Nidoqueen in the back. I tried to throw on CMP here with a potential Poison Fang. Unfortunately, the opponent does just overfarm considerably, so at this point, I'm going to bank the energy. I believe I'm one Peck away from a charge move. The opponent full sends the Stone Edge there, but of course, we should be able to outpace him to the next charge move here. Going to come back in with the Chattel, go for one Peck, fire off that Nightshade, and Nightshade from this range takes out the Shadow Nidoqueen, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You see Trumbeak into a Shadow Primeape. So, a great lead matchup and just great for the entire team. They're going to be safe swapping into a Shadow Diggersby. So, once again, I don't expect a shield here. I'm full sending return. And return nearly gets the one shot here. I know that is a Shadow Diggersby, but that is insane damage. They get to a Fire Punch there. I can get the full farm down. Unfortunately, it looks like they can probably farm me down with the Shadow Primeape if I stay in there. So, instead, we're going to swap into our Toucanon. And we are going to shield. the damage. They do bait with a Rage Fist, but their final Pokemon is Dartrix, and this game should already be over. We can fire off the Drill Pecks. Drill Peck number 1 is going to grab that first shield. Drill Peck number 2 should be grabbing the final shield from the opponent, and the opponent will have to fire off a charge move to get the KO. However, they've overfarmed too much. Now we have the energy for another Drill Peck. We might as well just shield here, fire off a third Drill Peck. Drill Peck from this range gets the KO, and now I'm going to reveal my final Pokemon, my Chatot, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's to opponent there. I don't know why I've not cut this out, so I guess I will be cutting it out in the final video. So, GG's to opponent there. Into the next battle, we see a Dusclops in the lead. I believe this is the first battle I did with this team, so I'm actually running Chatot in the lead. But I did realize I would prefer the faster pacing of the Trumbeak in the lead, and also having the coverage of return might be useful in case we do see something like an electric type Pokemon in the lead. But anyways, we're going to see an Azumarill coming in. We swap into our Trumbeak now, and we can actually reach a Drill Peck on the CMP tie. Drill Peck doesn't get the KO, but I'm assuming we can probably live an Ice Beam from this range. But nope, that assumption is completely wrong. I actually don't know the stats of Trumbeak or any of these 3 Pokemon. Actually, I probably should have looked into that before using the team. That is definitely a wise idea when you're running new Pokemon that you're not really used to using. You should definitely look at the stats first. But anyways, we're going to tank the move there. I realize, of course, Ice Punch is going to do less damage than an Ice Beam from the Azumarill. So we no shield there. We swap back into Chatot, and we go for a Nightshade. It ends up being shielded by the opponent. And now, of course, all shields are down on the opponent's end. We can land a Nightshade. And Nightshade from this range gets the KO there. They're going to come in with a Corviknight, and they are going to just barely outpace us to the charge move. Air Cutter coming through. It does not get the KO, but the opponent makes a brilliant catch there, catching the Nightshade. We do undercharge it, and that does allow us to come in and get a slight energy advantage with the Toucannon. We've got back-to-back charge moves here, and in this match, we are going for the Drill Peck first. I guess just seeing which is going to do more damage. Honestly, you can't really tell the difference in damage just looking at it like that, but unfortunately, perfect play by the opponent there. First of all, making that catch, and then, of course, over-farming. They will be able to outpace me to the next charge move, and from this range, Air Cutter easily takes out the Chatot, and unfortunately, we do lose that game. But GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Corviknight in the lead once again. So, same old story here. We're going to stay in. And of course, before I realized that the Rock Blast wasn't that good, I was swapping out basically every single time after the first charge move so I could try to land a Nightshade. Eventually, I do expect the opponent to swap out of this matchup, and they do, unfortunately, just before I can throw a Nightshade there. But my intention was to align my Toucannon with the Rock Blast to the Corviknight. However, of course, I do now realize that doesn't really help me. But anyways, we go for Sky Attack after landing a Nightshade, and as a result, they no-shield both times. Unfortunately, they barely hang on there, but that's fine with me. We put them into range where we can, of course, just peck farm them down. We come in with the Toucannon, expecting Corviknight to come back in here, but once again, I should be going for Drill Peck now that I realize that it does more damage, but I probably will be throwing the Rock Blast in this situation. The opponent gets the boost there, of course, with the Air Cutter. We fire off the Rock Blast. Rock Blast is actually going to be shielded by the opponent, so potentially a Pokemon weak to the flying typing in the back. I'm going to double shield, or sorry, use my first shield here, but I will be double shielding if the opponent double shields the Corviknight. Rock Blast is going to grab that final shield, and at this point, we are getting them very close to a single charge move range to get the KO. However, unfortunately, I don't think that is quite going to be the case. So we fire off the Drill Peck, and the opponent's actually going to swap out into Shadow Kanto Marowak. We're going to swap out, bank a charge move. I don't think I really needed to do that. I could have just thrown with the Toucannon. But anyways, we fire off the Drill Peck. It connects. It puts them into perfect farm down range for the Toucannon to come back in, get that farm down. We've got back-to-back charge moves. I'm firing off the Rock Blast. From this range, either one will get the KO, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into the next battle, we see Trumbeak into a Cradilly. So, not really an ideal matchup for me. I can, of course, outpace them to the first charge move. Gonna fire off the charge move on CMP here. If they do shield this, I probably can't really shield here just because the next Drill Peck is going to do less damage. So I'm going to no-shield. Rock Tomb, of course, gets the one-shot. As we've already established, these Pokemon are very glassy. We're now going to go for another Drill Peck, this time with the Toucannon. This time they are going to no-shield. I'm hoping that puts them into farm down range for either of my 2 remaining Pokemon. We actually swap out there just because, of course, they go for a debuff. They swap into a Kanto Ninetales on, of course, the buffed Ember and Weather Ball combination. If they full send an overheat, then fair play. But the opponent is just going to go for a Weather Ball there. Weather Ball not doing too much damage. But unfortunately, they will be able to reach yet another Weather Ball after landing the Weather Ball to get the KO here. If I had the Shadow 2 cannon, of course, we easily get the farm down there. But unfortunately, I'm forced to no shield here. And their final Pokemon, going to be a Primeape. If I can get the full farm down here, maybe we had a slither of hope. But unfortunately, they get the farm down. They take me out. And we do lose that game. But GG's up in there into the next battle. You see Drifblim in the lead. So a good matchup for me, of course. Icy Wind going to do a lot of damage. We have already seen Ice-type Charges one-shot the Trumbeak. So I will be shielding and respecting the damage there. Of course, I'm now debuffed. So Drill Peck not going to do too much damage here. You could argue I should have thrown that earlier and then swapped out. Because now, unfortunately, they can also outpace me to an Icy Wind up against the 2 cannon. I'm going to no-shield that intentionally. And now I'm also going to undercharge this. As now I can come back in with that Trumbeak and get a slight energy advantage. So of course, I'm going to come back in and get the full farm down there, and the opponent comes back in with their Shadow Drifblim. So we're going straight for Drill Peck. Drill Peck is going to be shielded by the opponent. I could have thrown pretty much straight away there. Instead, I tried to throw on CMP, but it backfires as the opponent then overfarms massively. But luckily for me, the opponent then swaps out into Gastrodon at the same time as I try to swap out as well. So we can just no shield here. They do go for a Body Slam bait. Don't really mind that. We can now fire off the Sky Attack. We're at 100 energy. Sky Attack gets the KO. We've got the Nightshade locked and loaded, ready to throw back into Drifblim coming in. And of course, super effective. It gets the KO there. And I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. We're going to see Trumbeak into a Unnovan Stunfisk. So, we have already seen us land a return up against Stunfisk, which did insane damage. I'm going to no-shield this. Discharge, not a very good move here. I was expecting to at least reach a return, but nope, that is not the case. And as a result, I recognize instantly, since we can't get to the return there, that is just a loss, so I do concede the match. So GG's to that trainer there. There were a few battles like that where I saw a Pokemon like a Bastion, for example, in the lead, and it was just an instant loss. But anyways, into the next battle, we're going to see Azumarill here. I can't remember if they led with the Azu or if they swapped into it. But either way, I'm going to shield up and they go for a Play Rough there. So that is an indication that they do not have Ice Beam. So as a result here, unless they farm up to a Hydro Pump, I do not need to respect the damage from their charge move. Of course, Play Rough's still going to do big damage here. 2 cannon, not the tankiest Pokemon ever, but we can at least tank that. I'm now going to overfarm, throw at the last second here just before they farm me down. Drill Peck is going to grab the final shield from the opponent. So at this point, I can't remember if I've got a move loaded on the Trumbeak. We do, but they swap into a Shadow Kanto Marowak. Somehow, even though I only threw one fast move there, they get off a full extra Mud Slap in for free. As well as swapping out there, so I don't really understand how that worked. But either way, they go for a Bone Club. They don't actually farm up to the rock side. Unfortunately, they barely reach yet another move. But again, just going to be another Bone Club. That is resisted damage. And of course, they come back in with that Azumarill. I can just safely shield up the charge move here. They're going to swap back into Sableye, and we can full send a Sky Attack. Now, Sky Attack, not the best charge move ever, but it still does big damage. One more peck, gets the full farm down. We can peck, farm down the Azumarill, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You can see Shadow Kanto Ninetales in the lead. So, once again, we are going to overfarm here. The opponent is not going to farm up to a potential overheat, so I do not need to I do not need to shield the first move. Then swap into Fearow, and you know what? We are full sending return. Return, gonna be no shielded. It gets the KO, and now I swap into 2 cannon. Of course, gonna go for Drill Peck here. Either charge move would get the KO from this range anyways. Drill Peck is gonna be shielded, and now once again, I'm gonna call that they're not full sending an overheat, and it is just the Weather Ball. This is going to force them to throw yet another charge move. I'm going to no shield this, save both my shields for that Chatot in the end game here, and hopefully that is going to work out for me. The opponent comes in with their final Pokemon, a Togekiss, and I can just safely shield up the first charge move as they go for an Aura Sphere. I'm now going to throw a Sky Attack just before they reach the next move. Sky Attack is actually going to be no shielded. It gets the KO, and that is certainly game over. We can just peck, farm down the Ninetales, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there into the next battle. You see a Shadow Nidoqueen in the lead. So, great lead matchup for me. The opponent's going to say swap into Blastoise. And of course, I do not have a response, so I'm just going to stay in. Fire off that Drill Peck. Drill Peck is actually going to grab an early shield advantage. Hydro Cannon barely doesn't get the KO there, so I'm actually going to swap out into the Chatot here. Probably should have swapped into Toucannon just because we are slightly spammier with the Drill Peck. Of course, Nightshade is 45 energy, but anyways, firing off the Nightshade. Nightshade is going to grab the final shield from the Blastoise. So the opponent really desperate for switch advantage. I'm going to no-shield. Hydro Cannon gets the KO there. We can come back in with our Toucannon, and I might look to try and commit to a full farm down here. I'm going to shield the first charge move as they do go for the Hydro Cannon, and then I will look to catch the next charge move here, banking the energy. The opponent does fire off that charge move straight away. Hydro Cannon gets the KO, and the opponent's final Pokemon is a Greninja. Now 2 Glass Cannons here. We are firing off the Drill Peck. Drill Peck, unfortunately, barely does not get the KO. Once again, if we had Shadow Toucannon, that's an easy KO there. But unfortunately, non-Shadow does not take them out. Hydro Cannon does easily take out Toucannon, however, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But GG's to opponent there. Into the next battle, we see a Togekiss in the lead. So looking to throw the Drill Peck straight away. We should be winning CMP in this matchup. The opponent doesn't throw straight away, however. So of course, they won't know that just yet if they're unfamiliar with Trumbeak, but that's fine with me, as we're going to fire off the next move straight away once again. This time, the opponent's actually going to catch it onto a Shadow Quagsire. So likewise, I'm also going to make the catch, catching onto my Chatot. Now the opponent fires off the Aqua Tail there. Unfortunately, that does more damage than I was expecting. A second Aqua Tail will actually get the KO. They do not need to farm up to a Stone Edge. However, I can shield and come out with a Nightshade loaded. So assuming Togekiss comes back in, which they do, we can win CMP here, grab that final shield, and the opponent is forced to throw straight away as they did try to snipe us with the Aura Sphere. Now we've got a move banked on the Trumbeak, but I'm actually going to come in with Toucannon, and their final Pokemon is a second Mudboy. This time, going to be a Gastrodon. We can go straight for Drill Peck, dealing big damage there, and the opponent is actually going to overfarm, allowing me to reach a second Drill Peck. Drill Peck gets the KO. We've got the Drill Peck loaded on the Trumbeak as well, and of course, from this range, it takes out the Togekiss, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there. Into the next battle, we can see Trumbeak into a Wigglytuff. So, this is kind of okay for us, of course. Is like, we're not taking as much damage as we would have done in previous seasons. So, I will comfortably be able to reach 2 Drill Pecks before they can fully fast move farm me down. I expected them to throw on CMP there, but unfortunately, they do not. So, of course, we give a full charm in for free. And unfortunately, I'm not running the Shadow. I'm not running Flash Cannon. If I had the Shadow Toucannon here, I checked after this battle. Flash Cannon from Shadow Toucannon does about 95% of Carbink's HP. That would have been so satisfying, but unfortunately not running it, so I'm forced to basically just concede the match there. I wanted to see how much damage a Drill Peck does, and unfortunately it was, well, laughable damage, really. But anyways, into the next battle, I'm going to see Shadow for Alligator. The opponent not going to full send an Ice Beam there. They don't really need to. I think Hydro Cannon probably does just get their one-shot up against us. But likewise, Drill Peck gets the KO there. They come in with Azumarill. So, interesting team here, being ABA double water so far. But anyways, we fire off the Drill Peck once again. And at this point, there's probably no reason to shield here. Of course, we do have some residual energy, but we should just save our shield for our final Pokemon. So we come in with the Toucannon, and we are going to fire off that Drill Peck on CMP here. And Drill Peck is going to grab the final shield, so potentially weak to the flying typing in the back. They go for an Ice Beam, and there it is. They've got Shadow Venusaur. We can go straight for Drill Peck here. And Drill Peck is easily going to one-shot that Shadow Venusaur. They come back in with a Azumarill. I actually don't need to throw a charge move here, instead committing to a full Peck farm down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up in there. Into the next battle, another Corviknight in the lead. And by the way, I did cut out quite a few battles with this team up against Corviknight leads because it just felt super repetitive. This time they actually full send a Payback. However, they swap into an a Kanto Marowak. So I full send the Drill Peck there. I'm now going to come in with the Toucannon. I look to throw on CMP. Arguably, I could have just shielded once and then committed to a full farm down there, but we do throw, we get rid of them, but they come in with a Blastoise, so slight overfarm there does allow me to reach a Drill Peck. Drill Peck is going to grab the first shield from the opponent. And at this point, I'm also going to respect the damage from that Hydro Cannon, and I will throw straight away. Drill Peck won't get the KO from this range, but it will put them into farm down range, and the opponent is actually going to double shield the Blastoise and allow me to reach yet another Drill Peck before they throw. It looks like they're farming to back-to-back moves, and now they're forced to throw here. At this point, of course, I'm going to have to no-shield this. I'm coming in with the Chattel, and they actually swap out straight away. That is huge for me. That means I do not need to use a shield there, and as a result, we can go for Nightshade. Nightshade does decent damage. I'm now going to swap back into Drumbeak, and we now have the energy for a Drill Peck. I might as well shield. They full send a payback there. Either way, it doesn't really make a difference. Drill Peck gets the KO. They could throw the charge move, but we would just farm them down with the Chattel anyways, and so the opponent allows me to farm them down, and I'm able to take that game. So, GG's up on there. Into next battle, we see Shadow Annihilate in the lead. They're going to safe swap into Empoleon, and of course, I do not have an answer whatsoever. We've only got Nightshade for neutral damage, but you can see Peck and Drill Peck actually does respectable damage in this matchup. So, just going to fire off a second one straight away, grab a shield advantage. I'm definitely going to have to let this move go through here. Of course, we can come in with the 2 cannon, and I should be able to shield once and actually outpace them to the next charge move. So, I'm going to shield this. Hydro Cannon would do big damage, and now we can reach a Drill Peck. Gonna throw on CMP here. Drill Peck is going to grab the final shield from the opponent, and likewise, I'm also gonna use my final shield. I'm hoping I can farm them down here, but the opponent actually swaps into a Corsola, so we're gonna come in with the Chattel, and I am just barely able to reach a Nightshade before they get to a Power Gem. Nightshade does big damage. It puts them into, unfortunately, not quite farm down range, as the opponent full sends a Power Gem. I could have gone for one extra fast move there, but it doesn't really make a difference. Drill Peck gets the KO. They're going to come back in with Empoleon. They're going to swap back into the Shadow Annihilate. I couldn't really remember how much they farmed before swapping out in the start of the match, and unfortunately, they just barely hang on there with 1 HP and a Dream. Hydro Cannon gets the KO there, and unfortunately, I do lose that game. But once again, another match where Shadow 2 Cannon would have dealt just barely enough damage to farm them down. But anyways, into potentially the final battle of this video, leading into a Shadow Nidoqueen. So great lead matchup for me, but once again, no answer to Blastoise, so just going to stay in, fire off the Drill Peck, and again, I'm going to use my first shield here, as the opponent is going to go straight for that Hydro Cannon. I'm now going to look to overfarm throw as late as possible here, but also throwing on good timing. Drill Peck is going to be shielded, and at this point, I can't afford to let the Drumbeak go down. I don't need switch advantage. We've got 3 of essentially the same Pokemon, so we come in, we get that farm down with the 2 cannon, and the opponent's going to come in with their final Pokemon, a Greninja. So same backline that we've already seen in a previous battle. We're going straight for Drill Peck. Drill Peck is going to grab that final shield here. I'm also going to use my final shield. The opponent fires off the Night Slash, but then they swap back into Shadow Nidoqueen. So I'm going to go straight for Drill Peck. Drill Peck is going to connect, of course. All shields are down. I'm now going to swap into Chattel, and then I actually stop attacking intentionally as the opponent full sends a Stone Edge. Now we can come in. We've got the energy for the Drill Peck, and I believe from this range this should now be enough damage to get the KO up against Greninja, and I'm able to take that game. So that's going to be it for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please make sure you leave a like, leave a comment letting me know, and as well, don't forget to respond to the question of the day if you haven't done so already. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Now, if you want to take your support to the next level, you can become a channel member with perks including early access to new videos, shoutouts at the end of each video, custom loyalty badges, and custom emojis to use in the comments of every video. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has become a channel member already. Your support is greatly appreciated, and with that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.